In this first learning module, we're going to focus on the Teams app value proposition. So our goal is to articulate for you the strategic impact of deploying Teams in your organization so that everyone who's involved in the decision-making process has a good sense of why we're going about this initiative. What are we expecting to gain from it? So to start with, let's just do a kind of a global definition of what is Teams. And so the way I like to define it or describe it is it's a digital platform to transform the way you communicate, collaborate, and share knowledge. And I know that probably sounds a little bit like a cliche, but that's truly what it does. And one of the key words in there is digital, and I probably could add to it digital cloud-based platform. Because Teams works through the cloud as all the Office 365 apps do. And what that means is that allows you to use the Teams to communicate with anybody, anywhere, at any time, inside your organization and outside your organization. And as you'll see as we go through the course here, you're going to start to see exactly how that really gets applied. So on this slide here, just to kind of give you a sense of Teams as regards to the rest of the Office 365 ecosystem, as we like to refer to it, understand that when Office 365 first came on the scene, Teams was not part of it. And it was back in, I believe, 2018 is when Teams was first really introduced into the Office 365 ecosystem as another app. And it quickly became evident that Teams was positioned to be the hub of everything that you do in Office 365. So in my coaching work with organizations on the deployment of Office 365, I always emphasize the importance of really starting with the Teams app and building out from there. So that's what this diagram is intended to show. So we have courses on all the Office 365 applications, but to me this is one of the most foundational courses to cover. So then you see around the perimeter what I've identified are what I consider to be the core Office 365 apps. I think currently there's somewhere between 25 and 30 apps that make up Office 365 altogether. But as a business organization, to me, if you focus on these that I've listed here, that's really going to be a great foundation for a digital office environment. So of course we have Outlook. Outlook is our primary email tool. And the big relationship difference between Teams and Outlook is that what will happen if you effectively deploy Teams, you will significantly reduce the amount of email messages you send in Outlook because your conversations, especially inside your organization, that heretofore would take place in an email conversation, those go away because those conversations now take place in the Teams app. Then we have the Office Online apps, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. And those are apps that you can run through the browser, and in the Teams application you can have direct shortcuts, if you will, or links to those Office apps or for the Office files, your Excel workbooks, your Word docs, and so forth, and then you can launch them in the browser version of Office and Word and so on. And so that's pretty integral. Then we have OneDrive and SharePoint apps. So those are your cloud storage apps that are part of Office 365. They have a very similar interface when it comes to the file management tools. The primary difference between OneDrive and SharePoint is the files you put in the OneDrive app are available only to you, unless you specifically and explicitly choose to share a file or a set of files or a folder with others. You can do that. You can choose to share access to your OneDrive files, but if you don't, all the files are only available to you. Whereas SharePoint, and you'll see there's a very deep integration between SharePoint and Teams. Of all the apps I've listed here, Teams and SharePoint are like hand in glove, literally. So SharePoint is the concept of having storage sites, or as they're called, SharePoint sites. And when you create a team, it also creates a SharePoint site. And what does that mean? Well, when you create a team, you invite people to be members of the team. They could be inside your organization as well as external to your organization. And if they're members of a team, that means, of course, they can participate in conversations, but they can also have access to the files related to that team that are stored in the SharePoint site associated with the team. So we will review the relationship as we get further through the course here. Then you have OneNote. So OneNote is, for me, it's my most popular or my favorite app of all that Microsoft has ever created. And I used Excel a lot for many, many years. But OneNote is the concept of having digital notebooks where you can just capture and collect and organize all of kind of like your miscellaneous content, memos, emails that you want to mark up, documents that you want to mark up. There's all sorts of things you can do in the OneNote application. And again, when you create a team in the Teams application, it also creates a OneNote notebook with the same name. So you have your conversations and your files are available through Teams and SharePoint. And now your additional content, your miscellaneous content, is going to be available in the OneNote notebook. Then we have the Planner app. Not quite as direct of an integration to Teams as SharePoint and OneNote, but the Planner app allows you to set up project plans for yourself or for small groups, even large groups for that matter. If you want to plot out a series of tasks that need to be completed for a project, for example, or an initiative, the Planner app is an online tool that really works well for that. It's very simple, but yet it has a lot of functionality and it's very intuitive. And you can connect to the Planner. Project plan that you set up in the Planner can be connected directly to a specific team. And then you have the Forms app. The Forms app is it's not a real robust app, but it does what it does very nicely. If you want to create a survey to capture input from individuals, again inside or outside your organization, the Forms app can do that through an online forms capturing application. And again, you can link that particular survey or form directly to a team. And then last but not least, you have Power BI. Now, Power BI is one of the most valuable features of the Office 365 ecosystem because that's what allows you to do advanced data analytics beyond the standard features of Excel, like pivot tables. It kind of puts pivot table functionality on steroids and allows you to connect to external data sources and do very sophisticated calculations, or what they call measures, and then ultimately present your results in very visual dashboards. Well, so you can create a dashboard like a KPI, Key Performance Indicator dashboard in Power BI, and create a connection to that dashboard directly into the Teams app. So when you're in a team, you say, oh, I want to go see the dashboard. It's right there. It's going to be right there within that particular team. So again, we have courses for all these different apps, but our focus here is on the Teams application. I just thought I'd give you that background because a lot of organizations are at the stage where they're trying A, to decide whether to deploy Office 365, or B, how to deploy it. And again, I can't emphasize this too much. Start your planning with the Teams app. So from there, let's talk about, well, what is the strategic impact of the Teams app? Well, first of all, as I've kind of alluded to a few times already, it will definitely enhance your internal and external communications. And what typically happens in organizations when they deploy the Teams, they deploy it internally, so they begin to have conversations, chats or conversation posts as they're called more specifically, inside of the Teams application at the expense of using Outlook for your email communications, as I mentioned. So you start internally, get everybody comfortable with it as a primary means of communicating, and then usually the next phase after that is, okay, let's open this up for external communications. So if you're, say, a construction company and you have a variety of suppliers and contracts that are working on a building project, you could set up a team for that building project, for a specific building, and you could invite selected individuals from your suppliers and contractors, and you can have your conversations there instead of via the email, as I've been saying. So you got to really see it in action and start to use it to see that the value of that, and it's something that'll just kind of grow in value as time goes on because everybody in your organization will get more comfortable with it, and they will certainly come to rely on it more and more as their primary means of communication. That's been my experience with our organization specifically, but also I provide a lot of coaching services to organizations, and that's typically the evolution that I see take place. It also allows you to organize information for quick retrieval. So remember, I use the term knowledge sharing. So not only do you have conversations in here, but all of the information associated with those conversations, documents, links to external applications like your ERP system or your financial system, or links to external sites altogether, like maybe a .gov site or a customer's website. Whatever you want, you can have from within a team your conversations, your files related to that team topic, whatever it may be, and then your links to external resources, which may be other Office 365 apps, or it may be external to your organization altogether. And then it becomes very easy to go, you just learn, okay, I need to go to this team because that's where that content and communication is going to be located. And again, it's a replacement for email conversations. I can tell you from my personal experience, after having used Teams for over 2 years now, that inside of my organization, it has reduced my email communications internally well over 80%. Because rarely, if ever, unless I'm not paying attention, I'm getting sleepy or whatever, I don't compose an email to other members of my company. Because if I'm going to have a conversation with other members of my company, I do it in the Teams app. It's just so much more efficient because you know how it is when you compose an email. I send you an email, you read it, you reply to it, I open it up, I read it, I reply to it. Next thing you know, we've got an email that's 5 pages long, and there's more of a delay just because of the nature of email communications. It's not as real time as like texting on your phone. So it becomes a substantial tool for replacing a lot of your email. And I think everybody can agree that that's a good thing. And one of the byproducts of that is we all know with email, all the phishing emails and emails with malware attached to them. Well, if we're doing less with email, that's a good thing because now in the Teams app, we're having person-to-person or group level of communications, and we're not having to worry as much about getting communications from people or organizations that are really not part of our ecosystem. And when I talked about knowledge sharing, so new hire onboarding, you might say, well, what is he talking about here? Well, what happens is when you get into Teams and you use it for a while, you have all your communications relative to projects and initiatives, et cetera, and you have all the files related to that. You have all the links to the external resources and other apps. So when you hire somebody into, say, a department within your company, like the marketing department, you can say, Joe, we're going to be kind of busy and we want to get you ramped up properly. So what I'd like you to do is spend the next day or so just going into Teams and read all the conversations, all the posts, say for the last year. And what that'll allow you to do is that'll get you more familiar with the nomenclature that we use in the company, the culture of the company, and who we're working with on, in this case, marketing initiatives. And you can then have access to the documents or the files, all the production that has resulted from the marketing department. So that's the knowledge sharing. You just go in there and just read and learn about the history of the organization, in this case, the history of the marketing department over the last 12 months or so. And so that can be a very effective tool when you have to transfer knowledge from one individual to another. And then the last point I'll make here is the Teams app, and this may seem like a contradiction here, but it enhances both transparency and information privacy. So when I say transparency, what I mean there is when you see how Teams works, if you have a team of 5 people in the marketing department and 2 people in that marketing department are having a conversation in Teams, the other 3 people will have the ability to see that whole conversation. It's not like a private chat or like a text messaging on your phone where only the people that are a party to the conversation have access to the conversation. No, in the case of Teams, access happens at the team level. And so that's how people can kind of keep abreast of what is going on in a particular area of the organization. And I'm just continue to use the marketing department as my example here. So, and that gets back to the previous bullet, right? The new hire onboarding. So if I bring somebody into the marketing department, they're going to be able to have transparency to all the communications that have taken place. So on one hand, it really helps an organization. I think most people would agree that more communication, if it can be done efficiently, is a better thing in an organization. So people just know what's going on. On the other hand, information privacy is also enhanced because when you have a team like the marketing team and you're working on things that you don't want other people in the organization to know about, if they're not a member of the team, they're not going to be privy to those conversations and the information related to those conversations. And so it becomes becomes a lot easier to control who has access not only to the conversations, but also to the files related to that team. And that's a big step forward for a lot of organizations because traditionally in a lot of organizations that have shared or public folders on their servers, and many times everybody in the organization would have the ability to get access to those shared folders, just because, especially in a smaller organization, it was just too much overhead to try to manage all those security controls within the Windows Explorer application. So that's where you get enhanced information privacy in the Teams app, is because by the nature of it, you have your information kind of walled off, if you will, at the team level. So hopefully when you see the rest of the material in the course here and you start to see how Teams works, you'll be able to come back and review these strategic benefits, and that helps a lot of organizations to really make the case for deploying the Teams app.